This is APYouthNet.
Welcome to the APYouthNet talk show, where we look at key issues regarding youth employment in Asia and the Pacific. From the International Labour Organization, I'm Matthew Koniak. In this show, we will explore what role and impact employers' organizations have on young people, and also how they contribute to tackle the youth employment crisis. Joining me today from Geneva is Brent Wilton, who is the Secretary General of the International Organization of Employers, the IOE. So Brent, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. The IOE has been at the forefront of a number of very important campaigns recently, such as the Global Apprenticeship Network and the Youth Entrepreneurship Support Programs, for example. How are these campaigns going, and what type of challenges or maybe opportunities do you see coming in the next months or years?
Well, I guess one of the challenges that we face with initiatives like the Global Apprenticeship Network and others is getting a sustainable mass of companies engaged in order to start to make a difference. So the ramping up of these things will take a while. Although I am very pleased to say that already we have on board a number of major multinationals around the world, and also some interest from our members to establish national country networks to take the Global Apprenticeship Network initiative further and faster. The challenges that we face, though, with regards to youth unemployment remain very, very large indeed, not only with regards to those who are actively seeking work, but unfortunately trying to get those who have left the labour market to re-engage and look for opportunities. I think the crisis showed very clearly that there were structural problems with employment of young people for many, many years. The crisis showed them up very clearly, but there are things that we need to go back to some distance to see exactly what's going on, because youth unemployment rates have always been traditionally high. What we've been advocating through this process is the need to ensure that we give youth a chance, that we can't have a large proportion of our current population unemployed, but also, in fact, having those people unemployed over time undermines and threatens sustainability of enterprises and development going further. So whilst the GAN is a start, it's not the only thing we need to do, and we look to the ILO to play its part in coming up with innovations that can help us have impact on the ground with young people.
Now, Brent, I want to come back on the role of employers, because of course, when young people are usually 2 to 3 times more likely, as we know, to be unemployed than adults. In some countries in Asia and the Pacific, they are up to 8 times more likely to be unemployed. And naturally so, employers tend to hire those workers that have more experience. That said, many young people who don't necessarily have a lot of experience have a lot to offer in terms of energy, creativity, willingness to work, and so on and so forth. So the question is, how do you, if not convinced, how do you bring this up with employers, this issue of, hiring young people is good for business?
Well, a number of companies out there in Asia and elsewhere recognize that young people do have a lot to offer, and no one's doubting that at all. The challenge is that while growth is slow, while growth is not at the levels it was pre-crisis, companies don't have the luxury of being able to take on board people as trainees and to give them opportunities that would otherwise not be available to people. It's because of the crisis now that companies, as they look to develop, are looking to their skill set and to recover skills that they have lost. What we need to really address this problem is more growth in the economies. And so government has a very large part to play there. And then we can extend the opportunities to young people as companies have more ability to absorb them into their businesses.
That's absolutely right. Really macroeconomic policies, putting jobs first,
Exactly.
and so on. But now at the same time, it's true that when you speak to employers, again, naturally so, they tend not to hire young people first, one thing, but they also tend to have this perception that young people don't have the necessary soft skills, so to say. That words such as laziness, arrogance, attitude often come when you discuss to employers about their ability to hire young people. And so that maybe creates some kind of, or maybe establishes some kind of a divide in the communication between employers and those young job seekers. How do you address this divide?
Well, I think one of the things we need to look at is some of these perceptions, and I'm sure that they vary country to country. But what certainly should be done is an engagement with the education sector to make sure that in their last years of education, some of these soft skill issues are being addressed by way of engagement with young people. I know I come from New Zealand, and I'm very well aware in terms of the industry, education, schools linkages we had, where businesses were able to talk to young people about the sort of soft skills that were necessary to make them attractive to a prospective employer in the future. So that's one element of what we need to do. But we also need to recognize is that businesses aren't charities. And so whilst there is a real desire amongst business to address this challenge of youth, there's only so much that they can do. And whilst there is not growth in the economy, we need to think about how partnerships with government by way of educational facilities, entrepreneurial skill training, the creation of new startup businesses, skills acquisition, and the capture of skills attained can actually be taken forward. Because I hate the expression unskilled. No one's unskilled. Everyone has abilities. We need to find a way to capture them and record them in a way which is useful to a business person looking to recruit perhaps a younger person, or to give a younger person a chance where they might otherwise have employed someone with skills.
Now, when we think about these younger persons, let's imagine any of them today, they are in a situation where the choices are very limited. Either they find a job in a company, in a business, or they don't, and then they start their own. And it's great to see that the IOE is very much at the forefront of promoting entrepreneurship, and the ILO, of course, is a very large program and entrepreneurship as well. But the challenge, I would say, is that entrepreneurship also can lead to work that we consider not decent. Entrepreneurship in the informal sector, leading to work in poverty and still being an entrepreneur. How does the IOE address this issue of decent entrepreneurship?
Well, we have to address in those contexts the larger problem of informality itself, which is why the discussion at this year's International Labour Conference is going to be so important. Not to re-articulate what the problem is, but to try and identify useful tools and mechanisms that governments, trade unions and employers have used with success on the ground to help these people into formality. You are right, we do not want to encourage an expansion of the informal economy, and therefore government in its work that it does with regards to entrepreneurship needs to ensure that they are looking at what are the barriers to starting up a business in the formal economy. And likewise with youth employment. I mean, if you are an employer looking to take on a young person in an environment where the law relating to terminations, discipline, etc., is just so cumbersome or so expensive, you actually create risk in employing a young person. So again, we need to take a realistic look at our labour legislation and environment, not a cowboy's charter, not making it an open range for all rules to apply, but recognising that young people coming into the job market may need to have some special treatment, and for the employer to be encouraged to do it may need to have some special treatment.
Well, thank you again very much, Brent Wilton from the International Organization of Employers from Geneva for joining us today on the show. And please join us again next time on the APYouthNet at apyouthnet.ilo.org for more on youth employment in Asia and the Pacific. From Bangkok, I'm Matthew Cognac. Thank you and goodbye.
This has been an APYouthNet production.